Words and compliments, but unfortunately they can turn harmful and emotional abusive over time. Emotional abuse in marriage is a type of domestic violence that often flies under the radar, but it should always be taken seriously as a form of abuse. So a couple can look like they're okay, they're happy. Yes, the man may not have even touched her physically, but there is something happening between the two of them. There is some form of emotional abuse, which is considered to also be a form of domestic violence. When emotional abuse is present in a relationship, a partner will criticize, threaten, or isolate their partner as a way to manipulate and control them. Emotional abuse can be degrading, humiliating, and terrifying, often leaving long-lasting scars on one's spirit and self-esteem. In general, a relationship is emotionally abusive when there is a consistent pattern of abusive words and bullying behaviors that wear down a person's self-esteem and undermine their mental health. So what are some of the acts? What are some of the things that happen? And by the way, these are not necessarily conclusive, right? But, for example, you find where there is a constant call, somebody constantly calls you hurtful or degrading names, insults you or criticizes you. And unfortunately, sorry by name, but unfortunately, sometimes even believers, God's people, are guilty of this thing. So you're consistently calling your loved one hurtful, degrading names, always criticizing them. Or this person acts, and by the way, it can be either way. It's not just so, don't just think it's just husbands, but also sometimes wives can also be emotionally abusive. This person acts extremely jealous or possessive of you, or they humiliate you in a way or shames you. Sometimes you find a spouse who is being isolated, they isolate you from your family, friends, or even community. They don't want you to participate with anybody. They don't want you to go and see your people. They block you from making new friends or even joining social groups. Or they ignore your presence for several hours, days, or weeks, or they refuse to listen, to speak, or even respond to you. You know the silent treatment? They just shut down. A form of passive-aggressive behavior. And they can shut down for weeks. They can shut down even for months. And you're there left devastated. Or sometimes they explode in anger towards you. Or consistently, they are angry at everything you do. Sounds familiar? I know you won't say yes because maybe that person is sitting next to you. This is explosions of anger. You can never do anything right. One time, many years ago, I was a young man. I was not yet married. So this person gave me a ride in their car. He was seated with his wife. And I'm a young fellow, one of you. So as we were just moving and he's driving, something disturbed me because this man was angry. I mean, he couldn't say a kind word to his wife. And it bothered me. So at one point, she had to go, before we got to where we were going, so she had to step out of the car and go to a shop and buy something. And so she steps out, and the moment she's there, after about a minute or two before she finishes, the man starts hooting. Hooting like, and because the shop was just next. What are you? You're wasting time. Come. So I'm not getting embarrassed. I'm wondering, what kind of fellow is this? I said, this is the last time I'm entering. If he can treat his wife like this. I'm scared of this one. But you know those explosions of anger. And you're consistently angry at everything this person does. Even if they smile. You're angry. You're upset. Or pressures you to commit and become angry. And becomes angry or sounds when you don't commit. When they want to do something, they get angry because you didn't do it, or you're taking too long. Or can I say this? Maybe on a Sunday morning, you're coming to church. and they're taking long to get ready. Beep, beep. Then when you get to church, oh man, you're looking like the most blessed couple. That time your children are looking at you, wondering, you know we confuse our children sometimes. Sometimes, they're wondering, man, this is Hollywood stuff. My parents are the best actors. Academy Award. A few moments, less than an hour ago, this guy was a lion. But right now, he's serving communion. Children are wondering, where? And then sometimes we wonder why our children lose interest in the gospel. Because they're wondering, hey, these guys are fake. You know, one of the things I've realized, especially the younger people, the word authenticity is their buzzword. They look for authenticity. Right? So if you're fake, they read right through you. But also sometimes you find people who threaten to hurt you or even themselves. They will threaten you physically, with physical violence. Or sometimes they even use weapons to scare you. And I know of even couples where maybe the guy is a licensed gun holder, and he will occasionally, you know those, I don't know if people are interested, you know those arguments where you have your gun, so you remove it and put it on the table. He never pointed at you, but he puts it on the table, and then he wants to engage you in an argument. Like, how are you going to argue? And you or sometimes they even threaten to hurt your children. Somebody wakes up and say, I will kill all the whole family. Or even family, if you have a pet, you're somebody who loves pets, they will threaten to kill your dog. Or threaten to take your children away from you. Say, I will divorce you and you will never see these children again. Or they begin calling you crazy. Or you're too sensitive. If you maybe show some form of displeasure, they say you're being too sensitive. They even deny the abuse is happening when they're confronted. You know what we normally call gaslighting. So they have a way of, if you confront them with their behavior, they have a way of turning it around. Have you ever found yourself apologizing for something you did? Or they actually even cheat on you and flirt with other people intentionally just to hurt you. Or they accuse you of cheating, and yet they're really just projecting their own behavior. Signs of an emotionally abused person or an emotionally abused spouse: social withdrawal. So you begin feeling isolated, and you begin withdrawing from others. This person is no longer confident to socially engage, or they have a very, very low self-esteem, become self-critical, feelings of worthlessness, or fear. Somebody begins walking in fear. You are walking literally on eggshells to avoid saying or doing things that will cause a reaction. Or adapting to other people's expectations. You find that you're changing your appearances, your interests, despite your own preference. In other words, you lose your own personality, your identity. Because now you're living for this other person. You dress the way they want. Even the food that you eat, if maybe you like ugali and they don't like ugali, you find that you actually change it to what they like, what they prefer, because now you have lost who you are. Or you actually end up losing your identity, giving up your activities, the activities that you enjoy. You become dependent or codependent on this person. So you lose your sense of independence. You find it difficult to make your own decisions. Voice of power, you don't contribute to decisions or participate in projects that affect both of you. So this person is very dictatorial. You have no voice in the family, you have no voice in the matter. Or shame, you feel guilty or anxious about who you are. And shame is one of those very difficult emotions to deal with. Or physical changes, you notice changes in your sleeping. Maybe your eating habits change because there's anxiety. Some people even end up putting on weight. because they're depressed, because they're feeling down, because they're anxious, or even psychological problems. You experience mental health conditions such as depression. You're always depressed, or you're just going through a cycle of depression to the next cycle, to the next cycle. Those are symptoms. Something is not right. Listen, friends, even as we're just about to bring this to a conclusion, that words are powerful. They can build, they can destroy. Sometimes there are words, there are things you may say to a loved one. And I assure you, it will take many years for that person to forget those words. Even when you have apologized, even when you have said you're sorry, and you have repented, it may take a very long time for that person to get over what you said, whether it is a spouse or even a child. We must be careful that even in that moment of frustration, before I say it, I must submit myself to God and say no. And that is why sometimes it's good in a heated moment of argument. Sometimes the best thing you can do is withdraw from that situation first, so that emotions can run low, and then you can be able to engage with a person. You may love somebody and you love them, you know you love them, you know you love them, but sometimes in a moment of weakness, you can destroy that relationship just with something that you said, a harsh word, which a lot of times you didn't even mean. It becomes very difficult to undo that situation. We must find ways to support one another. We must find ways to celebrate one another. Everybody, it doesn't matter how old you are, everybody desires to be celebrated in one way or the other. Everybody desires to be affirmed in one way or the other, isn't it? When even this morning, when you just walk by a person and say, hey, it's great to see you, how do you feel? You feel good, isn't it? Or you just walk out with somebody, hey, I love the way you're looking smart. How do you feel? You feel good, isn't it? It doesn't matter how old you are. It matters that somebody took time. They noticed me. I was seen. They saw me. And they appreciated. Well, this is what I normally say. For example, just taking an example. Even if, for example, especially for the men over here, even if, because I know they say that the way to a man's heart is his stomach, even if your wife can't cook, right? And I'm not of them are just that way. Thank God mine can't. Mine is a great cook. But even if she can't cook, please either help her, teach her, get a cook for her, find a way. But never ever use it against her. Piece of wisdom that will save your life. I'm telling you. Find something, surely she can't be that bad. Even if the only thing she can do is boil water. Celebrate that. Nobody can boil water
like you.
Pattern of behavior that has an agenda or an objective and not necessarily a single act. Right? So don't just pick one thing and say, instantly. But then the second thing is listen to me, Sister Karen. Change begins with you. Say, change begins with me.
Change begins with me.
Identify and address any tendencies within you to emotionally abuse others. By the way, this tendency is in all of us. Right? It's in all of us. It's very easy for us to succumb to those things, but the tendency is in all of us. So please be self-aware. It begins with self-aware. And decide, choose within yourself that I'm not going to be that person. Right? I'm not going to be that person. I'm not going to give people the silent treatment. I'm not going to be passive aggressive. If there are issues, I'm going to deal with them. But then the third thing is intentionally cultivate positive and godly values in your relationships in the family. Exactly. Going back to the book of Ephesians chapter 5 and Ephesians chapter 6 and Colossians chapter 3, the things that we just talked about, inculcate those things within your family, within the home, within your relationships. You have to be very intentional. These things don't just happen. Right? You have to choose to love your children. You have to choose to love you. By the way, here's the thing. Don't take your loved ones for granted. Even though you love them, let them know that you love them. Are you with me? So that you keep telling, remind them. You know, where love is concerned, human beings, we are like waffles. We forget very quickly. That is the truth. That's why you have to keep reminding, you have to keep reminding your wife, I love you. You have to keep telling your children on a daily basis. Not what I think is Reverend Judy, who I've had saying this many times. Somebody gets frustrated because the wife demands, you must keep telling me, I love you. And the husband says, I love you. The day it changes, you'll be the first to know. You have to keep reminding them. Am I right, Reverend Judy? You have to keep telling them on a daily basis, I love you. One of the things I try to do with my daughter, as she leaves the house in the morning, as she's going to school, I always try to remind her, I love you. So that when she's coming back home, she knows she's coming back to a place where she is loved. Don't assume
things. Yes, you may be Africans.
I know your father never told you he loved you.
Never.
I know you never saw him tell your mother. Please break that cycle.
Break that cycle, otherwise.
Are you with me? I know you want to bring that book to your father. That's good. But please tell her.
Tell me that you love me.
In fact, if you're sitting next to your spouse, why don't you try right now? The rules of engagement. Because conflict will happen, isn't it? How do we engage with one another? One of the things when we got married, my wife, one of the things we said some rules of engagement. We said in this house, we will not shout at one another, even if there's a situation. Because how many of you understand? The moment you raise your voice to a certain decibel, the point of what you are trying to make is lost.
Yeah.
Now the conversation becomes, why are you shouting at me? Anybody ever notice that?
Why are you shouting at me?
So you have to establish certain rules. In other words, some of the rules of respect one another. We try to inculcate that, also to my child. That no, here we respect. There's a way we talk to one another. We don't disrespect one another here. We don't shout at one another. We never raise a fist against one another. And by the way, those of us who are used to solving problems with a fist, please, I beg you for the glory of God, please stop.
Stop it.
It is not justified. I know in the African culture, it is a sign that you love your spouse.
Oh.
And then nowadays, these days, I'm told that even wives beat their husband. You don't beat people. Can I say it? It's primitive. It's primitive. Talk. Discuss issues.
Agree or disagree.
Forgive one another.
If you can.
There is no family will succeed.
Forgive one
no
another.
marriage can succeed. I promise you.
Forgive one another.
It is not forgiveness. Forgive one another. Sometimes we will forgive each other on credit.
On credit?
Because you know this guy is going to mess up. Believe me. Or this woman is going to mess up. Just forgive on credit. In fact, you tell her, even for the things you haven't done, I forgive you. And those ones you intended to do, even those ones I forgive.
I forgive you for those that you intend to do.
You have to keep forgiving. But also invest in quality. I've discovered this to be so good.
Invest in quality family time, you see?
But we must be
This is very important.
Quality family time.
Quality family
Friends, there is no
time.
substitute of you spending time,
It's important.
quality time with your family. Not just once a year in December, but on a consistent basis.
Only one time in
So that you
December.
can touch base with your children. Sometimes it is when you are spending time with them and you begin noticing changes even in your own children, isn't it?
Yes.
Otherwise, some things you will pass you. But as you spend time consistently with them, I know some of you have jobs, maybe you travel, it takes you away from home, but you must find ways to ensure that you're also plugging in so that you can invest love. The currency of love is quality time.
Quality time.
You can buy your family, you can buy your children, you can buy your wife, even a diamond ring, you can buy them expensive stuff. But friends, it will never equate
To quality
time.
Yes.
Let me develop.
Let men hear this.
Are you with me?
Yes.
And sometimes quality time is going to cost you money.
Yes.
especially if you're from where I am from, it will cost you money. Instead of buying another plot in Syokimau and Joska and Kamunu,
Take your wife out.
you don't need all those plots. That 200 is not in Muranga.
Take your wife out and not in Muranga.
The Lord blesses us
Yes.
materially,
Yes.
not just so that we can accumulate things, but so that we can also use that to invest it back.
In our relationship. Yes.
It is not money loss.
When you
It
take
is
your
a
family
relationship
out.
strengthening.
Amen to
Are you
that.
getting what I'm saying?
Yes.
To be intentional. Don't be so stingy.
Stingy that you can't take your wife out.
It's only the ladies who are
Stingy that you can't take your wife out.
getting in trouble if I continue with that. Finally, when all is said and done, and you find yourself in those situations, please, and maybe you don't find a way out, consider counseling.
Oh, counseling and as
Find
an
help
intervention.
somewhere. Are you with me? There's somebody who can help you. Whether it's in the church here, maybe pastoral counseling,
Consider
or maybe
counseling
trusted, somebody who's trusted, somebody
as an
who's spiritually.
intervention.
But please, find help. Let's all rise up on our feet.
So subscribe to Never
I hope
Age
you learned
TV.
something.